It was just after 6 in the morning when the sound reached me, a baby crying, not distant, not outside, inside the house, inside the kitchen. For a second, I stood frozen, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. There was no baby in this house. There had never been one. I had worked here for 3 years, cleaned every corner, memorized every routine. I knew this house better than my own. And yet the crying continued, weak, desperate, real. I walked toward the kitchen slowly, afraid of what I might see. With every step, my hands began to shake. The sound grew louder, sharper, cutting through the silence of the early morning. When I turned the corner, my breath left my body. A newborn. Baby was lying on the cold kitchen floor, no blanket, no basket, no note. Just a tiny body, red and trembling, crying as if it had already learned how cruel the world could be. I dropped to my knees without thinking. My first instinct was to pick the baby up, to warm it, to protect it. The child was alive, barely, its skin cold against my palms. I wrapped it in my apron, pressing it gently to my chest, trying to calm both of us. My mind raced. Who left this baby here? How did it get inside? The doors had been locked, the windows were closed. Nothing made sense. I looked around the kitchen, searching for anything, footprints, a bag, something that could explain this. Nightmare, there was nothing. The house was exactly as it had been the night before, clean, silent, normal, but nothing was normal anymore. I carried the baby to the living room and sat down, my legs weak. My heart was breaking as the baby slowly stopped crying, exhausted, its tiny fingers curling against my skin. That was the moment I felt something deeper than fear. Responsibility. I was just the maid. I wasn't supposed to make decisions like this, but leaving the baby there was impossible. I checked the time. The family would wake up soon. What would I say? What would they think? The owners of the house were wealthy, respected, powerful. I was careful every day not to make mistakes, not to cross lines. And now I was sitting on their couch, holding a baby that shouldn't exist. When the lady of the house came downstairs, everything changed. She froze when she saw me. Her eyes dropped to the baby, her face drained of color. "What is that?" she whispered. Her voice wasn't angry, it wasn't confused. It was terrified. I stood up quickly, trying to explain, my words stumbling over each other. I told her I heard the crying. I told her I found the baby in the kitchen. I told her I had no idea how it got there. She wasn't listening. Her hands started shaking, just like mine had. She stepped closer, staring at the baby as if she was seeing a ghost. Then she screamed. Not a scream of shock, a scream of recognition. She backed away, her eyes filling with tears, her mouth open but unable to speak. Her husband rushed in moments later, drawn by the noise. When he saw the baby, his reaction was different, stiff, controlled, unreadable. "What's going on?" he asked. No one answered. The lady collapsed onto a chair, covering her face. I had never seen her like this. She was always composed, always confident. Now she looked like someone whose entire world had cracked open. The baby stirred again, letting out a soft cry. The man looked at me then, really looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time. His gaze moved from my face to the baby, and then back again. Something dark passed through his eyes. "Where did this baby come from?" he asked slowly. I told the story again, my voice barely steady. The silence afterward was heavy, thick, dangerous. Finally, he said something that made my blood run. "Cold. This baby cannot be here." "Not should not, cannot." The lady suddenly stood up, her voice trembling. "We need to call someone, right now." I thought she meant the police, or a doctor, or an ambulance. But she shook her head. "No police," she said quickly. "Not yet." I didn't understand. A baby had been abandoned in their house. Why wouldn't they want help? Why did fear sit on their faces instead of concern? They argued in low voices while I stood there, holding the child, feeling like I was standing in the middle of a secret I didn't belong to. Every instinct told me something was terribly wrong. Then the man looked at me again and said, something I will never forget. You found this baby, he said. That means you are already part of this. My stomach dropped. They decided to take the baby to a private clinic. No records, no questions. I didn't want to go, but they insisted. They said I was the only one the baby responded to. That it would look strange if I wasn't there. In the car, the baby slept against me, peaceful now, unaware of the storm forming around it. I looked down at its face and felt a strange pull, like I had known this child longer than a few hours. At the clinic, the doctor examined the baby quietly. Healthy, born recently. No signs of injury. No explanation for how it arrived where. It did. Then the doctor asked the question that changed everything. Do you want a DNA test? The room went silent. The lady of the house looked like she might faint. The man hesitated only for a second before nodding. Yes, he said. We do. I didn't understand why. DNA tests were for parents, for families, for answers people were afraid of. This was an abandoned baby, or so I thought. As the nurse prepared the samples, the man's eyes stayed on me. I felt exposed, uncomfortable, like I was being measured in a way that had nothing to do with the baby in my arms. When the samples were taken, when the paperwork was done, when there was nothing left to say, the waiting began. And in that waiting, I realized something terrifying. This baby was not a stranger to this house, and whatever the DNA test would reveal, it was going to change all of our lives forever. The waiting was worse than the shock. Hours passed, but it felt like days. The baby stayed quiet most of the time, sleeping in my arms as if nothing unusual had happened. Every now and then it would stir, its tiny face tightening before relaxing. Again, each time it moved, the lady of the house flinched, like the sound hurt her. No one spoke much. The man paced the room, checking his phone repeatedly, then putting it away as if he was afraid of what it might say. The lady sat stiffly, her hands folded so tightly her knuckles turned white. I stayed in the corner holding the baby, wondering how my life had shifted so suddenly. I kept thinking about one thing. Why were they so afraid of a DNA test? When the nurse finally returned, the air in the room changed. She hadn't even said a word yet, but I could feel it. The man stopped pacing. The lady stood up slowly. My heart began to race again. The nurse cleared her throat and looked at the man first. We ran the comparison, she said carefully. The results are conclusive. The lady grabbed the edge of the chair to steady herself. The baby, the nurse continued, is biologically related to you. The room spun. The lady let out a sound that wasn't quite a cry and wasn't quite a scream. She sank back into the chair, covering her mouth with both hands. The man didn't react at all. He just closed his eyes for a long moment, as if this confirmed something he already knew. Related how? That was the question hanging in the air. The nurse hesitated, then said it. The baby is your child. Silence, not shocked silence. The kind that presses against your chest until it's hard to breathe. The lady shook her head violently. That's impossible, she whispered. That's not possible. The man didn't deny it. That's when I understood. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This was a secret that had finally caught up with them. The lady turned to him, tears streaming down her face. You promised me, she said. You said it was over. You said there was nothing. He didn't answer. I stood there, holding the baby, feeling like I was invisible and exposed at the same time. My hands felt numb. My thoughts were racing, but one fear was louder than the rest. Why was I here? The nurse quietly excused herself, leaving the door slightly open. The lady looked at me then, really looked at me, and something in her expression changed. Fear mixed with suspicion. How long have you worked for us? She asked. 3 years, I replied softly. Her eyes dropped to the baby again, and before that, I swallowed. I worked at another house, same city. The man suddenly spoke. Did you ever bring anyone here, a woman, a child? The question hit me like a slap. No, I said quickly. Never, I wouldn't. They exchanged a look, one filled with doubt. That was when it clicked. They thought the baby was connected to me. My chest tightened. I swear, I said, my voice shaking, I had no idea. I found the baby just like I told you. The lady stood up again, her voice sharp now. Then how did the baby get inside our house? No one breaks in here, no one. She was right, security was tight. Cameras everywhere. Guards outside. This wasn't a place someone could just walk into. The man rubbed his face slowly. There's only one explanation, he looked at me. Someone let the baby in. My knees nearly gave out. Are you saying I did this? I'm saying, he replied calmly, that someone you know might have. I felt sick. I had nothing to hide, but I also had no way to prove my innocence. I was just the maid, no power, no protection. If they decided to blame me, no one would question it. The lady took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. We need to deal with this quietly, she said. If this gets out, it won't, the man interrupted. Not if we handle it correctly. That word, handle, scared me more than anything. They started talking about options. Private arrangements. Legal agreements. Money, everything except the one thing that mattered. The baby. No one asked what would happen to the child. I looked down at the tiny face resting against me, completely unaware of the storm around it. And without thinking about consequences, I spoke. What about the baby? I asked. They both turned to me. He didn't ask. For this, I continued. Whatever happened, whatever mistakes were made, he's innocent. The lady's eyes filled with fresh tears. For a moment, I thought she might soften. Instead, her expression hardened. You don't understand, she said quietly. If people find out about him, everything will collapse. I realized then that this baby wasn't just a secret. He was a threat? The man stepped closer to me. We'll take care of the child, he said. You don't need to worry about that. Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. Take care how? I asked. He didn't answer. That was when fear turned into resolve. I didn't trust them. Not anymore. I had seen too much, heard too much. And the baby in my arms deserved better than whispered plans and closed doors. That night, they insisted I stay in the guest room. For rest, they said. You've been through a lot, but I knew the truth. They wanted to keep an eye on me. I lay awake in the dark, listening to the quiet house, my heart racing. The baby was sleeping in the nursery now, a room that had been empty for years. Cameras were on, doors locked, and somewhere in that silence I understood something that terrified me. This baby's arrival wasn't an accident, and I was no longer just a witness. I was standing between a powerful secret and a child whose life depended on what I did next. I barely slept that night. Every sound in the house made my heart jump. A door closing, footsteps in the hallway. Even the hum of the security system felt louder than usual. I kept thinking about the baby alone in the nursery, surrounded by silence, and secrets he didn't deserve. Before sunrise, I made a decision I knew I couldn't undo. I went to the nursery. The baby was awake, staring at the ceiling with wide, curious eyes. When he saw me, his lips trembled and a soft cry escaped his throat. I picked him up immediately, holding him close, feeling his tiny heartbeat against mine. I won't let them hurt you, I whispered, even though I wasn't sure how I would stop it. That's when the door opened. The lady stood there, already dressed, her face tired but composed. She looked at the baby in my arms and sighed deeply. You shouldn't be here, she said. I won't leave him, I replied quietly. She walked in and closed the door behind her. For a moment she didn't speak. Then her shoulders slumped and all the control she'd been holding on to cracked. He's not supposed to exist, she said. Not like this. I finally asked the question that had been burning inside me. Who is his mother? Her eyes filled with shame. A girl who worked for us years ago. I thought she disappeared. I thought it was finished. The truth landed heavily. She must have come back, I said. She did, the lady admitted. She came to him, begged him to acknowledge the child. When he refused, she threatened to expose everything. And then? I asked. The lady looked away. Then she vanished. My blood ran cold. Vanished how? She left the baby, she said quickly. That's all. She left him and disappeared. I didn't believe her, and judging by the tremor in her voice, she didn't believe herself either. Footsteps approached, and the man entered the room. He looked at the baby, then at me, and for the first time his confident mask slipped. "You shouldn't involve yourself," he said. "This isn't your problem." "It became my problem when I found him crying alone," I replied. He sighed. "We can give him a good life. Money, education, everything. But not love," I said before I could stop myself. The lady flinched. Silence followed. Thick, uncomfortable silence. Then the man said something I never expected. "We're arranging for him to be adopted, quietly, no records connected to us." The baby stirred in my arms as if sensing the tension. I shook my head. "You can't just erase him." "We can," the lady said softly. "And we will." That was the moment fear turned into certainty. I knew what I had to do. Later that day, when the house was busy with phone calls and hushed conversations, I did something dangerous. I took photos. The nursery, the baby, the documents I found on the desk, the DNA report. I didn't know who I would give them to yet. I only knew I needed proof. That evening, as I packed my things, the lady watched from the doorway. "If you leave," she said, "you won't come back." "I know," I replied. The man stepped forward. "You can have money," he said. "Enough to change your life." I looked at him. "And leave him?" He didn't answer. I tightened my grip on my bag. "I won't be silent," I said. For the first time, I saw real fear in their eyes. I left the house with nothing but my belongings and the truth. I didn't take the baby, not yet. I knew that would end badly. I needed help. Real help. Within days, everything unraveled. Authorities came. Questions were asked. The story leaked, not loudly, but enough. The baby's mother was found alive, hiding, terrified, but determined to protect her child. The truth was worse than I imagined. But it was finally out. The man lost everything. His reputation, his position, his control. The lady disappeared from public view, and the baby, he wasn't erased. He was returned to his mother, safe, loved, free from secrets that were never his to carry. As for me, I lost my job, my home, my security. But I gained something far greater. I learned that even the smallest voice can change everything if it chooses to speak. And sometimes the truth doesn't knock politely. Sometimes it cries in the kitchen, waiting for someone brave enough to listen.